They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I've spent 5 years making sure mine was frozen solid, calculated, perfect, inevitable. My name is Alessandra Moretti, but the man I'm about to destroy knows me as Vanessa Reed. 5 years ago, Lucian Castillo murdered my father, destroyed my family, took everything I loved and left me with nothing but grief and rage. I was 22, naive, powerless. I'm not that girl anymore. I spent 5 years learning finance, strategy, how to be invisible, how to be deadly, how to slip into his world and tear it apart from the inside. Today, I walk into his office for a job interview. He thinks I'm just another consultant. He has no idea who I really am, or what I'm about to do to him. 5 years ago, I knew exactly who I was. Alessandra Moretti, daughter, sister, someone who believed in justice. Now, I'm not sure anymore. Vanessa Reed is just a name, a cover, a tool. But when this is over, when he's destroyed and my father is avenged, who will I be then? I don't let myself think about that. The Castillo building was everything I expected. Sleek, expensive, built on blood money and broken families. I'd walked past it 100 times in the last month, memorizing exits, security patterns, the face of every person who worked there. But today, I was walking through the front door. My credentials were impeccable. Vanessa Reed, financial consultant, MIT graduate, 5 years at a top firm. References that would check out because I'd spent 2 years building them. The receptionist smiled when I gave my name, told me Mr. Castillo was expecting me. I rode the elevator to the top floor, watching my reflection in the mirrored walls, dark hair pulled back, conservative suit, professional, unremarkable. Exactly what I needed to be. The doors opened to a penthouse office, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the entire city, the kind of space that reminded you who had power and who didn't. And sitting behind an enormous desk, reviewing documents with the focus of someone used to making decisions that mattered. Lucian Castillo. I'd seen photos, obviously, studied his face until I could draw it from memory, but photos didn't capture the presence. The way he commanded space without moving, the intelligence in his dark eyes. He looked up when I entered, and for a split second, something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or assessment. Then it was gone, professional mask back in place. He stood, extended his hand. His grip was firm, warm. I hated that I noticed. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, told me to sit. We talked about my experience, my qualifications, the work his organization needed. He asked intelligent questions, listened to my answers like they actually mattered. It threw me off. I'd expected arrogance, cruelty, the monster from my nightmares. Instead, I got a businessman, controlled, thoughtful, almost reasonable. After 30 minutes, he leaned back in his chair, studied me with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. He said I was overqualified for the position, that he'd expected someone less impressive. I asked if that was a problem. No, he said, it was exactly what he needed. Someone who could think 3 moves ahead, someone who wouldn't back down from a challenge. He offered me the job, double the salary I'd asked for, started Monday. I accepted, shook his hand again. And as I left his office, I thought I'd taken the first step toward destroying him. What I didn't know was that he'd recognized me the moment I walked in, knew exactly who I was, and decided to let me stay anyway. But I had my own secrets, my own plan. In 6 weeks, I'd have access to his financial systems. In 8, I'd have the passwords to the offshore account that funded his protection network, the one that kept his people safe, his family protected. The account his father established before he died, the one Lucian still contributes to, his legacy. When I drained it, I wouldn't just take his money. I'd destroy the one thing he honored, the promise he made to his father. That was the plan. Clean, surgical, devastating. Or so I thought. The first week was strange. I'd prepared for a lot of scenarios. Hostility, suspicion, the cold efficiency of organized crime. What I got was late nights in adjacent offices, professional respect, Lucian treating me like an actual consultant instead of an accessory. He asked my opinion on financial structures, listened when I pointed out inefficiencies, implemented changes I suggested. It was disorienting, easier when he was just the monster who killed my father. We worked late most nights. The building would empty out around 7. Security would do their rounds, and it would just be us, going through contracts and corporate structures and the legitimate businesses that hid his real operations. On Thursday of my first week, around 10 p.m., he appeared in my office doorway. Asked if I drank coffee. I said yes. He came back 10 minutes later with 2 cups, set one on my desk. It was exactly how I took it. Cream, no sugar. I asked how he knew. He said he paid attention. Then he left, back to his office, like it was nothing. I was 3 weeks in, right on schedule. He trusted me with sensitive files, gave me access I shouldn't have, let me into his world without suspicion. Everything was going exactly as planned. I was in control. I believed that completely. But I sat there staring at that coffee cup, thrown off balance by such a small gesture of consideration. This wasn't part of the plan. Friday night, even later, nearly midnight, I was reviewing documents, making notes on vulnerabilities I could exploit. Lucian knocked on my door frame, said I should go home, get some rest. I told him I was fine, almost done. He leaned against the doorway, loosened tie, sleeves rolled up, looking more human than I wanted him to. He said I reminded him of himself, when he first took over, working around the clock, trying to prove something. I asked what he was trying to prove. That he deserved the position, he said, that he could protect what mattered, that he was more than just his father's son. It was the most personal thing he'd said to me, vulnerability where I'd expected walls. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just said I should finish up. He nodded, told me to lock up when I left. His security would walk me to my car. I didn't need an escort, I told him. He said he knew, but he was giving me one anyway. Then he left, and I sat there wondering why kindness from him felt more dangerous than cruelty. 2 weeks in, I made a mistake. We were working through a contract dispute. Late night as usual, Lucian had come to my office, spread documents across my desk. We were sitting close, both reviewing the same page. That's when I saw it, a scar on his left hand. Long, thin, surgical precision. I asked about it before I could stop myself. He glanced at the scar, then at me, like he was deciding how much to say. A gift from my father, he said finally. The night I took over the family. He didn't think I was ready, tried to convince me with a knife. He paused, looked at me with something I couldn't read. Most people don't ask about the scars, he said. They pretend not to see them. I said I wasn't most people. No, he agreed quietly. You're not. The way he said it felt weighted, like he was saying something else entirely. But I didn't press. I'd spent 5 years hating Lucian Castillo, building him into a monster in my mind, the villain who destroyed everything good in my world. But in that moment, I saw something I didn't want to see. Pain, regret, the weight of choices made in impossible circumstances. He was human, damaged, haunted by his own ghosts. I pulled back, physically and emotionally, reminded myself why I was here, what he'd taken from me. But the crack was there now, in my certainty, in my rage. and I didn't know how to seal it. If Lucian isn't the villain I need him to be, then who am I becoming? 3 weeks in, everything changed. I was leaving the building late, nearly 11. Lucian had left an hour earlier, meeting with associates. The parking garage was mostly empty. My car was on the 3rd level. I didn't see them until it was too late. 2 men, professional, moving with purpose. One grabbed my arm, the other moved to cover my mouth. I fought, training kicked in, elbow to ribs, heel to instep. But they were bigger, stronger, and there were 2 of them. I was losing, being dragged toward a van. That's when the gunshot rang out. Not at me, at them. They dropped me, went for their weapons, but they were too slow. Lucian came out of the shadows, gun raised, expression cold, lethal. He shot the first man in the leg, center mass on the second, both dropped. Then he was in front of me, checking me over with hands that should have been steady but weren't. Asked if I was hurt, if they'd touched me. I said I was fine, shaken but fine. His jaw was tight, fury barely controlled. He called someone, told them to clean up the garage, get these men to the basement. He'd deal with them later. Then he turned to me, hand on my face, gentle despite the violence he'd just committed. Told me I was safe, that he wouldn't let anyone touch me, that I was under his protection now whether I wanted it or not. I should have been afraid, of him, of what he'd just done, of how easily he'd killed. Instead, I felt safe, safer than I had in 5 years. And that terrified me more than the attack. Later, I'd wonder why his security team arrived so fast, why they seemed to know exactly where to find me. Why Lucian happened to be there at all, when he'd left an hour earlier. But in that moment, I was too shaken to question it, too grateful. He took me to his penthouse, said my apartment wasn't secure enough, that whoever sent those men might try again. I should have argued, should have maintained distance, professional boundaries. But I was shaking, adrenaline crash hitting hard, and his hand on my back, guiding me inside, felt like the only solid thing in my world. The penthouse was exactly what I expected. Expensive, tasteful, the kind of place that cost more than I'd make in 10 years. He poured me wine, red, expensive, handed me the glass and told me to drink. I did, it helped. He sat beside me on the couch, not across, beside, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said no, then after a moment, yes. I asked why they took me, what they wanted. Leverage, he said, against me. You work for me, that makes you valuable and vulnerable. I said I could take care of myself. He said he knew, that I'd fought well, that most people would have frozen, but it didn't matter. In his world, being associated with him painted a target on your back. I asked if he regretted hiring me, making me that target. He was quiet for a long moment, then, every day. But not because I don't want you here, he added, because I know what it costs you, what it will cost you, and I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. It was the most honest thing he'd said to me, raw, real. I asked why. Why keep me? Why protect me? Why any of this? He looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to say something that would change everything. Instead, he said, because you see me. I didn't understand. He explained, most people see what I want them to see, the boss, the threat, the monster, but you look at me like I'm a person, like the choices I've made don't define every part of me. It's refreshing, he said, dangerous but refreshing. I should have stayed quiet, should have maintained my cover. Instead, I said, my father used to say the same thing. The words were out before I could stop them, too personal, too real. He asked about my father. I caught myself. Vanessa Reed's father was a banker, boring, safe. So I lied, said he was a good man, that I missed him. It wasn't entirely untrue. Lucian was quiet. Then he said something that made my chest tight. He said, I think he'd be proud of you, the woman you've become. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, stared at my reflection and tried to remember why I was here. To destroy him, to make him pay, to avenge my father. But the man in that living room wasn't the monster I'd built in my head, and I didn't know what to do with that. I was losing the narrative, the one I'd built for 5 years. Lucian Castillo was supposed to be a villain, cold, cruel, easy to hate. Instead, he was human, complicated, someone who'd made terrible choices for reasons that almost made sense. And I was starting to care about him. I should leave, right now, before this got worse. I should walk out of this penthouse and disappear, abandon the mission, protect what was left of myself. I knew that. I went back to the living room anyway. He sees me, and that terrifies me more than any danger could. 4 weeks in, the tension was unbearable. Every late night working together, every casual touch, every moment of unexpected kindness. I told myself it was part of the plan. Get close, gain his trust, find his weaknesses. But I was lying. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. I was attracted to him, more than attracted. I thought about him constantly. The way he listened when I spoke, the intelligence in his eyes, the unexpected gentleness in his hands. I hated it, hated myself for feeling it. But I couldn't make it stop. Friday night, late, we were arguing about a contract negotiation. I said he was being too aggressive. He said I didn't understand the stakes. I told him I understood perfectly, that pushing too hard would backfire, that he needed to think 3 moves ahead. He stood up, frustrated, said I was questioning him. I stood too, said damn right I was questioning him. That's what he hired me to do. We were close now, too close. I could see the tension in his jaw, the control it took not to, something. He asked why I cared so much. I said it was my job. He said it was more than that. I said fine. Yes, I cared about the work, about doing it right, about. I stopped, couldn't finish that sentence. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. He said, about what, Vanessa? The name felt wrong, like a lie between us. I said, about you, I care about you, and I hate that I do. Saying it out loud felt like defeat. 5 years of planning, of discipline, of turning myself into a weapon. And I just admitted I cared about the target. It should have felt like failure. Instead, it felt like relief. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, relief, hunger. He asked if I wanted him to stop. I should have said yes, should have maintained distance, remembered the mission. Instead, I said, I don't know what I want anymore. He said, then let me show you. His hand came up, cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheek. He gave me every opportunity to pull away, to say no, to stop this before it started. He kissed me, soft at first, testing, then deeper when I didn't resist. I kissed him back, hands in his hair, 5 years of rage and grief and loneliness pouring into that kiss. He pulled back just enough to breathe, asked if I was sure. I wasn't sure of anything, except that I wanted this, wanted him, even if it destroyed everything. I pulled him back, kissed him harder. He lifted me. I wrapped my legs around his waist. He carried me to his bedroom. What happened next was inevitable, desperate, the collision of 2 people who'd been circling each other for weeks. Afterwards, lying in his bed, his arm around me, I should have felt guilty, should have remembered my mission. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. I felt whole. I woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then I felt the warmth beside me, the weight of an arm across my waist. Reality crashed back. What I'd done, what I'd compromised. I started to pull away. He tightened his hold, not possessive, just reluctant to let go. His voice was rough with sleep, told me to stay. I said I should go. This was a mistake. He said it didn't feel like a mistake. I turned to face him. His hair was messy, eyes soft in the morning light. No walls, no armor, just a man who'd let me see him. I asked what we were doing. He said he didn't know, but he knew what he wanted. I was afraid to ask, but I did anyway. What do you want? He touched my face, gentle, reverent. He said, this, you, whatever this is between us, I want to see where it goes. I told him it was complicated. He said everything worth having was complicated. I wanted to tell him the truth then, who I really was, why I'd come, what I'd planned to do. But the words wouldn't come, because telling him meant losing him, and I wasn't ready for that yet. So instead I kissed him, slow, tender, a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. He kissed me back, like I was precious, like I mattered. Like I was more than just the weapon I'd made myself into. We eventually got up, made coffee, fell into an easy rhythm that felt too natural, too right. He asked if I had plans for the day. I said no. He said good, stay. I should have left, should have put distance between us, regrouped, remembered the mission. Instead, I stayed, spent the day with him, talking, laughing, learning who he was when the world wasn't watching. And with every hour that passed, the line between Vanessa Reed and Alessandra Moretti blurred a little more. Vanessa was supposed to be a role, a performance, a mask I could take off when this was done. But what if Alessandra was the performance now? What if the girl who wanted revenge was the lie, and this, him, us, this feeling, was the only real thing left? I didn't know anymore. And that terrified me more than anything he could do to me. Because I'd spent 5 years knowing exactly who I was and what I wanted. Now I was afraid to find out. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew the truth was coming. That he'd discover who I really was, what I'd planned, why I'd come. And when that happened, one of us would be destroyed. I just wasn't sure which one anymore. Or which outcome I was more afraid of. 3 weeks after that first night, I moved into Lucian's penthouse. Not officially, not with a conversation or a decision, it just happened. I'd stay over after working late, then stay again the next night, until one morning I realized my things were there. My coffee mug in his cabinet, my books on his shelf. He never asked me to stay, but he never asked me to leave either. And I didn't want to. We fell into a rhythm, working together during the day, existing together at night, learning each other in the quiet moments between. I discovered he made terrible coffee, but excellent pasta. That he read philosophy when he couldn't sleep. That he had nightmares about his father and woke up reaching for a gun that wasn't there. He learned I hummed when I was concentrating. That I took my tea with honey. That I was afraid of thunderstorms because my mother died during one. Small truths, intimate ones. All while the biggest lie sat between us, invisible, inevitable. One night, 2 weeks in, we were cooking dinner together. Him at the stove, me chopping vegetables. The kind of domestic moment that should have felt wrong but didn't. He asked what I was thinking about. I almost told him, almost said everything. Instead, I said, this, us, how easy it feels. He turned from the stove, studied my face like he was looking for something. Does it feel easy to you? I said yes, too easy. He was quiet for a moment. Then, sometimes the right things are easy. It's the wrong ones that take effort. I should have heard the weight in those words, the test hidden in casual conversation. But I didn't, or I did and I ignored it. Because easy felt too good to question. 4 weeks after that first night, I logged into the offshore account to disable the transfer. And realized I couldn't, not without triggering an alert, not without Lucian knowing someone had accessed his father's legacy account. I'd been too careful, too thorough. The transfer was scheduled for the 15th of next month, 43 days away when I said it, 19 days away now. The amount would drain the protection fund, trigger regulatory scrutiny, federal audits, investigations into every business tied to that account. I'd designed it perfectly, a surgical strike that would make him answer for everything his father built. What I hadn't designed was an exit strategy. Stopping it meant confessing, explaining why I had access, who I really was. Letting it execute meant destroying him, and everyone who depended on that money. I sat there at 3 a.m, Lucian asleep in the next room, staring at code I'd written weeks ago. Code that no longer represented what I wanted. I could confess, right now, wake him up, tell him everything. The thought terrified me more than the transfer itself. So I did nothing, closed the laptop, went back to bed, told myself I had time. 19 days, I'd figure something out. 5 weeks after that first night, Lucian started asking questions. Small ones, casual, the kind you'd miss if you weren't listening. He asked about my college years, what MIT was really like, if I kept in touch with anyone from back then. I answered carefully, stuck to the Vanessa Reed story, but something in his tone made me wonder if he was testing me. One night, working late in his office, he mentioned my references, said one of my former employers didn't remember me quite the way my file suggested. Just a small discrepancy, he said, probably nothing. I kept my voice steady, asked what kind of discrepancy. He said it didn't matter, that sometimes people misremember, or records get confused. But the way he watched me, when he said it felt deliberate. Another night, he asked about my father, the banker I'd invented. He said it was interesting, that my father worked in international finance, that we must have similar skills. Did he ever teach you, Lucian asked, how money moves, how systems work? I said yes, that he'd taught me everything. It wasn't entirely a lie. My real father had taught me about money, about power, about the systems that hid both. Just not the way Vanessa Reed's father would have. Lucian nodded, said it made sense, that I was too good at this to have learned it all recently. Then he changed the subject, asked what I wanted for dinner. Like it was nothing, like he hadn't just told me he was watching more carefully than I realized. I should have confessed then. But I was afraid of losing him, of becoming the enemy again. So I smiled, said anything was fine, and pretended I didn't see the doubt in his eyes. 6 weeks after that first night, I discovered what the money really protected. I was reviewing account distributions, routine work, making sure I understood the full scope before the transfer executed. That's when I saw it, a line item I'd missed before. Monthly payments to a security firm in Florence, consistent, substantial, coded under consulting services. I dug deeper, traced the payments back years, 8 years to be exact, to right after Giovanni Moretti died. My father. The payments funded protection for someone in Florence, a priority target, 24/7 coverage. I pulled the file, saw the name. Isabella Castillo, Lucian's sister, 24 years old, art student. The photograph in her file showed a young woman with dark hair and her brother's eyes, smiling, unaware. I did the math. She'd been 16 when my father died. A decade after the photograph I'd seen of her at 6 years old with their father. 16, when my father tried to kill her. The protection Lucian had maintained for 8 years. The promise he'd made to keep her safe after their father died. And in 12 days, that funding would disappear. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling sick. I hadn't known, hadn't understood what the account actually protected. It wasn't just his empire, it was her life. That night I couldn't sleep, kept seeing her face in the file photo, young, innocent, unaware that her brother's enemy was sleeping in his bed. Lucian noticed, asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just tired. He pulled me closer, told me to rest, that everything was fine. I wanted to tell him, wanted to warn him, wanted to undo everything I'd done. But the words wouldn't come. 2 days later, the call came, 3 in the morning. Lucian's phone. He answered immediately, tone sharp, alert. I watched his face change. Fear, fury, control barely maintained. He asked if she was safe, if they got there in time. Whoever was on the other end said yes. Barely. The detail was late, funding delay, but they got there. Lucian was silent for a long moment. Then he said to double the team, pull from other accounts if necessary. He didn't care about the cost. He hung up, sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. I asked what happened. Someone tried to grab Isabella, he said, outside her apartment. Professional job, they knew her routine. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I asked if she was okay. She's fine, he said. Security got there, but it was close, too close. He looked at me then, and for a moment I thought he knew, thought he saw right through me. But he just pulled me close, held me like I was the only solid thing in his world. Told me he didn't know what he'd do if he lost the people who mattered. I held him back, hating myself, hating what I'd done, what I was still letting happen. Because I'd caused this, the funding lapse, the delayed response. I'd almost gotten her killed. 7 weeks after that first night, Lucian told me about his father. We were in his office, late night, just us. He'd been quiet all evening, distant. I asked what was wrong. He said he'd been thinking about his father, about the account, about legacy. He pulled out an old photograph, his father, younger, standing with a little girl. That's Isabella, he said. She was 6. He adored her. I looked at the photo, saw the love there, the protection. Lucian said his father wasn't a good man, did terrible things, but he loved his children, wanted them safe. When he died, he left instructions. Lucian continued. Money set aside, for protection, for Isabella's future, for the people who'd been loyal. He said he'd maintained it, honored it, because it was the one good thing his father did. Then he did something I didn't expect. He opened his safe, pulled out documents, access codes, passwords. He handed them to me, said he trusted me with this, with the one thing that mattered most. I stared at the papers, the same account I'd been planning to drain. Why, I asked, why trust me with this? Because you see me, he said, the real me, not the boss or the threat, just me. And I need someone to know, someone who understands what this means, what it protects. He looked at me with something like vulnerability, like he was giving me something precious, irreplaceable. I almost told him then. The words were there, on my tongue, ready. But I looked at his face, saw the trust, the openness. And I couldn't do it, couldn't be the person who destroyed that. So I took the papers, said I'd protect them, protect what mattered to him. He kissed me, gentle, grateful. And I held the evidence of my betrayal in my hands, saying nothing. 9 days left. 8 days before the transfer, I tried to stop it. I accessed the system, prepared to disable the code, trigger whatever alerts necessary. I'd confess, take the consequences, lose him if I had to. But at least I'd stop it. I entered the access codes, navigated to the transfer schedule, and froze. Someone else had accessed the account, recently, within the last hour. He'd logged in, reviewed the same files I was looking at, seen the scheduled transfer, and done nothing. I sat there staring at the timestamp, understanding what it meant. He knew, had known, maybe for days, maybe longer. And he hadn't confronted me, hadn't stopped me, hadn't said anything. Just watched, waited, gave me chance after chance to tell him the truth. And I hadn't. I closed the laptop, hands shaking. 7 days left, and he knew everything. 6 days before the transfer, Lucian went quiet. Not angry, not cold, just distant. He worked from home, spent hours in his office with the door closed. When we were together, he was gentle, careful, like I was something fragile that might break. I didn't know what to say, how to bridge the silence growing between us. That night, he came to bed late. I pretended to be asleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, didn't touch me. Then he spoke, voice quiet, sad. He said, "I know who you are, Alessandra." My blood went cold. He said he'd suspected from the beginning. Something about me felt familiar, the way I moved, the way I thought. But he dismissed it, told himself he was being paranoid. Then the questions started not adding up. The references, the background, small discrepancies that accumulated. So he'd investigated, traced my credentials, found the real Vanessa Reed, working in Seattle, never applied to his company. He'd dug deeper, found photos of Giovanni Moretti, of his family, of a young girl who looked exactly like the woman in his bed. He'd confirmed it weeks ago, and he'd waited. I turned over, faced him, no point in pretending anymore. I asked when did he know for certain? 3 weeks ago, he said, when I showed you the photograph of Isabella. The way you looked at it, the recognition, the guilt. That's when I knew for sure. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I asked why let me stay, why let me get close. He was quiet for a long time. Then, because I hoped you'd stop, that whatever you'd planned, you'd abandon it, choose this, choose us. He looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Pain, real pain. But you didn't, he said. You set something in motion, and I've watched you decide every day to let it play out. I started to speak. He raised his hand. He said he'd given me every opportunity, every chance to tell the truth. He'd shared his father's legacy, trusted me with what mattered most, opened himself completely. And I'd said nothing. I don't know what hurts more, he said, that you planned to destroy me, or that you let me fall in love with you while you did it. Tears were streaming down my face. I tried to tell him I'd changed my mind, that I wanted to stop it, that I loved him too. He said he believed me. That's what made it worse. Because loving me didn't stop you from lying, he said, and loving you doesn't stop this from destroying everything. 5 days before the transfer, we had the conversation that ended us. He asked me to explain, from the beginning, why I'd come, what I'd planned. So I told him everything. My father's death, the grief, the 5 years of preparation, the plan to drain the account, to make him answer for what he'd done. I told him I hadn't known what the money protected. I hadn't understood until it was too late. I told him I'd fallen in love with him, that it wasn't part of the plan, that it had destroyed everything I thought I knew. He listened, didn't interrupt, just let me speak. When I finished, he was quiet. Then he asked, "Do you know why I killed your father?" I said yes, that my father was planning to kill Isabella, that Lucian acted first. He nodded, said, "I gave him a choice, told him to walk away, let the territorial dispute go, I'd compensate him. He refused, said he'd rather die than back down to me, so I obliged. Lucian looked at me, and I saw the weight he carried. Your father made his choice, he said. I made mine, and you made yours. I asked what he meant. He said, you chose revenge over truth, deception over trust, and now we both have to live with that. Then he said something that cut deeper than anything else. Do you know what hurts most? I would have helped you grieve your father, if you'd trusted me enough to let me. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He continued, we could have mourned what happened together, found a way to honor what was good about him, built something new. But you chose to lie instead, and that choice, that's what I can't forgive. I asked what happened now. He said the transfer would execute, he wouldn't stop it, wouldn't expose me, wouldn't protect himself. Because stopping it requires explaining who you are, he said, and I won't do that, won't destroy you even now. But we're done. Whatever this was, it ends when that transfer executes. I asked if there was any way to fix this, to undo what I'd done. He said, can you give me back the months you lied to me? Can you undo the fact that you let me fall in love with someone who didn't exist? I couldn't answer. He said, that's what I thought. 4 days before the transfer, he told me to leave. Not cruelly, not with anger, just finality. He said I could stay in the city, work, live my life. He wouldn't retaliate, wouldn't expose me. But I couldn't be near him, couldn't be in his life, not anymore. I asked if he hated me. He said no, that he wished he did, would be easier. But I just can't look at you, he said. Can't be near you without remembering what we could have had, if you'd chosen differently. I packed my things, not much, just what I'd brought. He watched from the doorway, silent. I stopped at the door, turned back. I said, I'm sorry for everything, for what I did, for what I destroyed. He said, I know, but sorry doesn't change what happened, doesn't give us back what we lost. I asked if he'd ever forgive me. Maybe, he said, someday, but I'll never forget and I'll never trust you again. That hurt worse than anything else he could have said. I left, walked out of his penthouse, out of his life, and felt like I was leaving pieces of myself behind. 3 days before the transfer, I went to my father's grave. I hadn't been since the funeral, 5 years ago, when I was still the girl who believed in simple justice. I stood there looking at his name carved in stone, Giovanni Moretti. And I tried to remember why I'd done this, why I'd spent 5 years becoming someone else. For him, for justice, for the family he'd left behind. But standing there, I couldn't feel the rage anymore, the certainty, the righteousness. My father had made choices, terrible ones, ones that cost him his life and almost cost an innocent girl hers. Lucian had made choices too, protected his sister, honored his father's one good act. And I'd made mine, planned revenge without understanding the cost, let love happen while the lie grew, chose silence over truth until it was too late. None of us were innocent, none of us were monsters. Just people, making impossible choices in impossible circumstances. I didn't know what to do with that, with the complexity, the moral ambiguity. 5 years ago, everything was simple. Lucian was the villain, I was the hero, justice was clear. Now, I didn't know who I was anymore. Not Alessandra Moretti, the grieving daughter. Not Vanessa Reed, the perfect employee. Just someone who destroyed the only real thing she'd had in 5 years. The morning of the transfer, I made my decision. I refused to let my final act be silence. I accessed the system, triggered the alerts, stopped the transfer. Then I called the regulatory agencies myself, told them everything, who I was, what I'd planned, why I'd stopped it. I knew what it meant, disbarment, legal consequences, the end of any career in finance. But I couldn't let it execute, couldn't let Lucian pay for my revenge. even if it meant exposing myself, even if he never forgave me. By noon, federal investigators were at Lucian's building, not to arrest him, to question me. I told them the truth, all of it, took responsibility for the plan, for the access, for everything. They said Lucian had already given a statement, confirmed my story, said he'd discovered the plan and was working with me to stop it. He'd protected me, even now, even after everything. Not to save me, I realized, but to control the narrative, to keep Isabella's name out of it, to protect what mattered. Pragmatic, strategic, even in this. That night, I sent him a message. I told him I'd stop the transfer, turn myself in, that he was safe, his sister was safe, the legacy was safe. I told him I didn't expect forgiveness, didn't deserve it. But I wanted him to know I chose differently. Too late, but I chose. His response came an hour later. Just 3 words. Thank you, goodbye. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement that I'd done the right thing, finally. It would have to be enough. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. From Lucian's attorney, legal documents, a settlement. I'd expected a lawsuit, a restraining order, something punitive. Instead, it was a job offer. Consulting work for a nonprofit that managed protection services, the one that handled Isabella's security. It paid barely anything, would take years to undo the damage I'd caused. But it was a chance to help, to contribute, to maybe eventually earn back a fraction of what I'd destroyed. The letter included a note, handwritten. It said, "You can't undo the past, but you can choose what comes next. This is me choosing to believe you meant what you said." Not together, not partners, but connected by consequence. By the choice to rebuild instead of retreat. I accepted the offer, moved to a smaller apartment, started work. And every day, I chose differently than I had before. Chose truth over deception, consequence over escape, action over silence. It didn't erase what I'd done, didn't give us back what we lost. But it was a beginning of something, someone new. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. What they don't tell you is what happens after you've tasted it. The emptiness, the regret, the understanding that justice and vengeance aren't the same thing. I came into Lucian Castillo's world to destroy him. Instead, I destroyed us both. And in the ruins, we're building something different. Not romance, not forgiveness. But maybe honesty, finally. My name is Alessandra Moretti. And I'm learning that identity isn't about the revenge you take or the lies you tell. It's about the choices you make after everything falls apart. I'm choosing to rebuild. One day at a time.